Rock and roll is here to stay, and we'll tell you why. Coming up next on Carolina People. Good morning. Welcome to Carolina People. This morning with the Myrtle Beach Herald. We're focused on an upcoming class at Coastal Carolina University's Waccamaw Higher Education Center, and we're visiting with its instructor, Harry Turner. Good morning, Harry.
Good morning, Greg.
The history of rock and roll and beach music.
Yeah, it's something with us, especially here in Myrtle Beach all the time. And of course, rock and roll nationally, worldwide, still the biggest music form there is.
Absolutely, and of course, this is something. I mean, this is a class you've taught before.
This will be the third year. Yeah.
Third year.
Yeah, that's right.
Now, of course, in the past, you taught over in Conway, I believe.
At the main branch.
Down here at a little south of Brook Green Gardens, now at the new Waccamaw. Exactly. Of course, you were instrumental in getting Linda Ketron with us a number of months ago here.
That's right. Linda's the head of that branch, and just doing a great job down there.
Oh yeah, they have kicked off full guns a-blazing.
Oh, there's no doubt. Boy, you talk about energy. They call her the Energizer Bunny, and there's a lot of truth to that.
Absolutely. Now, Harry, of course, with you living in North Myrtle, that's a heck of a trip down to.
Well, not really. If you live in this area, the trips aren't that long. You get used to it.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, your students are coming in from all over, up from Georgetown, down from Conway, multiple counties even.
That's right.
Obviously, multiple counties, and Coastal Carolina University has done such an amazing job expanding out into other areas, up into North Myrtle, down into the Waccamaw area.
It's amazing. I travel all the time, and people all across the Southeast, especially South Carolina, just marvel at what's happening at Coastal Carolina University. It's just expanding so fast. The football program, the stadium, the new arena that's probably going to happen.
Right.
I'm going to tell you, Dr. Engel and his crowd have really they really made a mark.
They've made
a very positive mark.
Some great partnerships in the community in the last 50 years. 1954, I think, was the kickoff, just celebrating 5 decades. Real quick about yourself, Harry. You originally from the area?
Originally from Greenville, South Carolina.
Yeah. How long have you been down here?
About 5 years.
Is that right? Of course.
But I've always, been involved down here to some extent. I've traveled here and stayed here a lot and stuff. But so much was happening here, I had to move my office. And even though I do a lot of business throughout the Southeast, mainly North and South Carolina, and have offices and do a lot in the Columbia, Newberry area, as well as the upstate Greenville, Spartanburg, Anderson, Pickens County, that kind of stuff. This is basically the heart and soul of it.
Now, when you say your office, this is Turner PR Consulting.
That's correct. Yeah,
right.
That's correct. Yeah.
Now, of course, have you ever taught these classes anywhere other than Coastal Carolina University?
No, but we've had some feelers from some people at Clemson University, Newberry College, and some others. Swannanoa College up in North Carolina has contacted us too. It's going to expand greatly, it looks like.
I suspect so, and of course with this kicking off next Wednesday, and I think it's an afternoon class, folks can do it for
3:15 to 4:45.
Okay,
it's
right.
Wednesday the 19th it begins, 6-week course, and they'll learn a lot. It's Greg, it's very interactive. I get the students involved, but also a lot of audio, visual, video, as well as Paige Sawyer, who is on the board of the Beach Music Association International, of which I'm president, is my assistant. He also is a city councilman down at Georgetown. Additionally, Representative Bubba Snow will be coming over and teaching the course runs, really, it starts, say, the early 1900s, right on through the present, with most of it being the 40s, 50s, 60s up. But Representative Snow is a real expert on that pre-1950s era, and even the dances that developed throughout the Carolinas. So he comes in and on the second course and gives a little help there to us. And then our good friend, you know him as well, Billy Scott, entertainer extraordinaire, will be coming in the last course and kind of giving an artist perspective and that kind of stuff. So it's just going to be a lot of fun for the folks.
Billy is an amazing entertainer, and so
yes, he is.
That's great to get folks in from all over.
And he's also very articulate, a good spokesperson, knows a lot, great at answering questions off the cuff, and we might even get him to sing a song.
Tough to catch Billy off guard. You're right. Good answering questions on the spot. I suspect. And Bubba Snow as well, and of course. You know, for you, Harry, it's so difficult to imagine encapsulating the history of rock and roll and beach music into 6 weeks, but at the same time, someone's got to do it. I mean, you obviously have to make that effort to do it.
Yeah, and you know, part of the reason I wanted to do this course and wrote the book, which is the
Sure,
textbook,
we'll talk about that.
is that a lot of rock and roll history has been basically slanted to some extent, not purposely so. But what happened after the British invasion with the Beatles and what have you? Basically, America, the country that invented rock and roll, turned rock and roll over to the British on a silver platter. And in so many ways, the British have been telling us about our own music. And have put as much or more emphasis almost on what was happening in Britain musically as what happened in America, again, which is the country that invented rock and roll. So, you know, I figured we needed to put the original American slant on it, the factual part of it, not the part that has been somewhat discolored. You got to remember, it's hard to talk about the history of American rock and roll if you were 3,000, 4,000 miles overseas.
Sure.
And that's basically what's happened. Many of the great critics, I don't say great, but of the critics of rock and roll and the historians are British people.
Now, do they claim at all any? I mean, the foundings or the under?
No, they don't claim it. They don't claim it. It's just that because the British invasion and the British influence was so strong, there was almost an assumed that. Well, let me put it this way: a lot of people that don't know any better assumed that real rock and roll started with the Beatles. That the first 10 or 15 years, the founding period, was just that necessary part for real rock and roll to start. Well, a lot of Americans, myself included, think the best it ever was the American rock and roll. And to be honest, that the British rock and roll took it down some notches from how good it was in the first 10 to 15 years. And, you know, that kind of thing needs to be known. And I explain that with examples and so on down the line. You know, it's not a knock to the British side of it. It's just say an uplifting American perspective side of it, but it is the true historical perspective.
Well, sure. One question I think a lot of folks wonder is just how it got that name, rock and roll. But I think another thing, real quick, Harry, share with the viewers a little bit about this magic moment, which you published back in 1994 and are updating right now.
And updating it right, yeah. Really, just what I explained to you, it was the purpose of writing this book, was to give an American perspective on the history of rock and roll, and of course, beach music. You know, for those in this area, and for those with the expanding knowledge of beach music throughout the world now. But probably one of the greatest compliments I've ever had, or certainly it made me feel great, D.D. Kenner grew with a group called the Crystals, who did He's a Rebel, to Do Run Run, some of those big hits in the 60s.
Yeah.
And Billy Reed of the Tokens, who did The Lion Sleeps Tonight. We're on a tour together and had a copy of the book, and we're reading it. And called me one night. In fact, it was kind of a downtime. You know, when you publish a book, you have some great days and you have some days when everything goes wrong. Well, this was one of those days when things just weren't going right for whatever reason. And about 11 o'clock at night, they called and they said, "Listen, we just want to tell you it's the greatest book on the history of rock and roll." Somebody, because you've got to remember, the Tokens and the Crystals both were American groups that were pre-British invasion groups. And they said, "Thank God somebody is telling it like it is." Says, you've nailed it, just totally. And what a compliment it is to have the artists tell you that. And then a secondary compliment was the great Jerry Butler, who did He Will Break Your Heart and the original Moon River and For Your Precious Love and Oh, the Strong Survive. Just a superstar. He's the president of the Rhythm and Blues Foundation, a city councilman in Chicago. Anyway, Jerry wrote his biography, or really autobiography, I guess. And he called and said he had read my book and liked it.
Right.
And he called and said, "Do you mind if I mention your name, you know, or what have you, in the book?" I said, "Certainly not." Well, his book comes out, and he didn't even tell me this. I didn't even know it. I turned to chapter 9, and the heading of chapter 9 is a quote from my book.
No way.
And then 2.5 pages in his biography were devoted to myself, my book, and the Carolina and Southern love affair with original American rhythm, blues, and rock and roll.
Wow, Harry, that must have been.
Oh, it's quite a thrill to have that happen. But I guess the most important thing is it basically gives credibility. You know, if the artists believe what you say, there's credibility to what it's on. It's not just some fan or some whatever out there just grabbing at straws and putting it down right.
Absolutely, no, of course, very definitely. And the exciting aspect there is, of course, you mentioned folks all over the country that have gotten copies of the book. One great way now, I think you told me before we started, Amazon.com is a vehicle to buy it.
I'll tell you one other quick story, if you don't mind. I met Pat Boone. And Pat, see, one of my clients is the Newberry Opera House in my PR consulting business, and Pat was playing up there, and I met him, gave him a copy of the book. Now you'll love this. In the book, I said that Pat Boone did inferior versions, cover meaning re-recording songs of Fats Domino and Little Richard. Well, Pat was a real nice guy. Well, about 2 weeks later, I get a letter from him. And it was really interesting. He had nothing but praise for the book. He thought it was great. But he said, but I do want to take issue and explain, why you made that comment. And this is so great. I passed this on to my class and let the class read it. But what he said was, I never thought about this. See, back in those days in the 50s, there were mainly white radio stations that played all white big band music. They didn't play this black music. All that stuff was going on back then. And yet, even though the public was just embracing this rhythm and blues rock and roll wholesale. So Pat Boone did 2 or 3 records, and he made the rhythm and blues, which was basically the black music charts, and people thought he was black. I even at first had thought he was black. But what happened...
And he was using that name, Pat Boone.
Pat Boone, yeah. But what happened, he was basically only played on black radio programs and black radio stations, which they just weren't that many. So the Dot Record people, his record label, had him, because Ain't That a Shame by Fats Domino was just a monster hit.
Right.
As was Tutti Frutti by Little Richard.
Yeah.
So what you did was you re-recorded those songs, get played on white radio stations. Now, the point Pat made, and I didn't know this, and I've learned it, and this is one of the updates I'll be putting into my updated book.
Right.
He said, Harry, had I sung Ain't That a Shame or Tutti Frutti in the black R&B form, which I had done earlier, I, like Little Richard and Fats Domino, would only have been played on the black radio stations. He says, but I sang it and performed it in a white, almost big band manner. That's why it's considered by people who were into the original rhythm and blues stuff an inferior version. He said, so I'm just explaining to you why it happened that way. And it even opened my eyes. And of course, I know a lot about the music because I learn something new every day, but that was certainly a tremendous eye-opener.
That is, very definitely. He wanted to make sure it got good distribution.
Exactly.
He knew it wouldn't if it was only played on the black radio station. That's fascinating.
Yeah.
Now, of course, here you point out indirectly one thing there is your own experience on air. Obviously, having been a radio.
Oh yeah.
Been on the radio for how many years? And that was in the upstate.
I was syndicated. I was on about 40 stations throughout the southeast for about 6 or 7 years. But I started in the upstate and was on the radio for close to 30 years.
Come on.
Oh yeah. But it was just a part-time program. I had my own insurance agency and stuff like this, and did this as a hobby.
Right.
But it was a weekend show called Harry Turner Presents the Originals. And I was syndicated in 5 states.
Wow.
Southeastern states. But the upstate program was in existence for almost 30 years. I discontinued doing the syndicated show because it was it like this book and like the course was a show built around the history of the music and facts about the artists and what have you. But what happened, the radio business has changed so much that they don't really want talk on music stations. It's all about music, 12 in a row, this kind of thing. So I was getting pressure from the stations not to talk so much. And even the songs that I would play, because they only want top 2 or 3 songs that made the top 2 or 3 positions on the charts. It's all a business thing. So when those pressures started happening, I was never on the radio for my ego. I was on the radio because I wanted people to learn, just like this book and the course.
Absolutely.
So when they started putting those kind of pressures on, I basically said thanks but no thanks and took myself off the air.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
I want to make sure we get the phone number in for viewers who need to run out now to work or otherwise. The phone number for the Waccamaw Higher Education Center, 843-349-4032.
Yeah.
Great way to register. There's still a couple openings, I believe, for the class.
I think so, yeah.
It starts obviously next Wednesday, the 19th, a week from this Wednesday. and folks can call at least to find out. And it's just a little south of Brook Green Gardens, a common place close to the Hampton Inn there in Litchfield.
Right behind the Hampton Inn. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, yeah. Beautiful, beautiful new building. It's going to grow.
A prime location, 349 4032, so folks can travel in from anywhere. I mean, the great thing is it's an afternoon class, and I think you said from 3:15 to 4:45?
4:45.
Okay,
6 weeks. 6 weeks.
Great way for folks to get out of work early, possibly, and come sign up if they can get out for those 6 weeks.
That's right.
Share with viewers real quick the tie-in with beach music, Harry, how it's encapsulated in the class and how you pull it in and make it special.
Basically, I'll synopsize as quickly as I can. Basically, as music tastes changed elsewhere, nationwide and worldwide, people in the Carolinas just had this fondness, and well, fondness it had a deep love for original rhythm and blues and rock and roll music, American rock and roll, especially the black R&B sounds. A lot of it had to do because you could dance to it. And, of course, the primary dance in the Carolinas is the shag. A lot of it had that shag beat.
Right.
But we Carolinians also, we did the twist, we did the stroll, we did these things too, but the shag was the main thing. But we also did a lot of slow dancing.
Right.
And there was nothing to slow dance to like those Groovy in the Still of the Night by the Five Satins and My Prayer by the Platters. And we just love that stuff. So as we saw those tastes changing to a mainly guitar-based music with no longer with the emphasis on the soul and the feeling and the great voices and the great harmonies.
Right.
We didn't go with it. The South was a lot slower going with it, and the people who have stayed in what's called beach music territory were ones who just said, "Hey, let the rest of the world do what they want. We've got this music that we love that was recorded in the 40s, 50s, and 60s, and we want to stay with it, and we want to continue to dance to and listen to music that's recorded since then that has that same sound and feel." Thus, Carolina Beach. It basically is original American rhythm and blues and rock and roll, with the affiliation with the shag is certainly being a part of it, but nowhere near all of it, because much of the music you can't shag to, but a good percentage you can.
Golly, Harry. How exciting. I want to get back to that basic question again, how they came up with the name rock and roll, where that was originally.
Well, that's an interesting one. Rock and roll was a slang for making love.
Oh, come on.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, I can believe it now as I
Yes,
think about it.
As you think about it. Right. Now, let me tell you, the first time I ever heard it was a song. It's still the #1 beach music hit of all time. It's called 60-Minute Man by the Dominoes.
Yes.
And in that song it said, "I can rock 'em, roll 'em all night long. I'm a 60-minute man."
That's right.
Yeah, it really was. It was slang for making love. And back in those days on the radio, everything, the most obviously the beat was double entendre, and that's certainly what rock and roll was. Yeah.
That's fascinating. I've never heard that.
Yeah.
And so I mean that's a.
It's in the book.
That's great in the first 10 minutes of your class, I guess.
Well, I do cover it. I can't remember exactly where I do, but yeah, I do cover that.
It was fascinating. As I opened up this magic moment earlier this morning, of course, you gave me a signed copy a long time ago, Harry. I saw the dedication in there. You dedicated it to the great artists, the creators of America's golden music, and obviously that wish that the book would really have an impact on them, as it did, as folks were calling you, as you said, 11 o'clock at night, that it will tell those that aren't aware wherein lives the true heart of rock and roll.
Exactly.
It's so vital there when you think of that aspect.
Well, it's an effort to keep this music alive, vibrant, and of course that our association, if you don't mind me saying so, our Beach Music Association International, of which you know several members like Billy Scott, Hilda Carter.
Absolutely.
And it's growing. We're just doing extremely well with it. But it is to keep this music alive, get it in front of young people, because it truly is a form of music into itself that is so well loved. Let me give you an example.
Sure.
In the Carolinas, almost whenever you have company parties and weddings and things like this, if there's any one type of music that's featured, it's beach music. And the reason is, if you have a country band, the rock and rap people ain't gonna like it. If you have a rock band, the rap and country folks don't like it. If you have a rap band, the country and whatever. Yeah.
Right.
So, but beach music, even though it may not be the favorite of everybody at these events, it's one that nobody dislikes, you see, and it is the favorite of many. So it's that music certainly in the Carolinas, but even in other areas of the country, you'd be surprised, they don't necessarily call it beach music, but they hire bands and DJs who feature a lot of this kind of music. Basically, it's beach, soul, Motown, doo-wop in the early hours, and then in the late hours, as the younger people may take it over, it goes into the 80s, 90s, maybe 70s funk sounds that they can dance to. But it's basically a rhythm and blues-based music.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, yeah.
That is fascinating. You know, there's so many aspects here when we think about, of course, having been on the radio for a long time, having been in the presence of some amazing artists. Of course, you brought in so many into
you've
the
been to
area.
many events.
Maurice Williams, that you've been instrumental in
Well,
getting
we did the Great Symphony thing that was Hilda's idea.
Of course, that's
with,
right.
With Bill Pinckney, the Drifters, Maurice Williams, the Zodiacs, and Billy Scott of the Prophets. And then, and of course, you know, beach music is the official popular music of South Carolina, as I said earlier. And we now have, this will be our 5th year this year, believe it or not, Beach Music Day. It'll be April 13th on the State House steps, South Carolina, in Columbia. And I've got another good announcement to make. We have just pretty much verbally closed out a deal to have our first Beach Music Day in North Carolina.
Is that
on
right?
the State House grounds there. Secretary of State Elaine Marshall is coming on our board, and she's going to head up the movement to get that done. In fact, I've got to mail some stuff out to her today so she can get that. It's going to be sometime in May. Don't have the exact date.
In May.
Then we've got an ETV special that's going to be taped at the Newberry Opera House April 6th, which will be used as one of their fundraisers later, featuring some of the bigger, nationally bigger names of beach music, and they're going to then send it out to the rest of the PBS stations throughout the country to get them to pick it up. So we got a lot of pretty exciting things going on.
Golly, and all that is wrapping it, going through the Beach Music Association International.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah.
You all founded that just a few years ago, Harry.
That's correct. This is our, I believe, our 4th year.
Right, right.
Well, this must be our 5th year coming up, because we founded it just after the first Beach Music Day.
Okay.
You know, so I may have the year. It's 4th or 5th year.
Sure. And it's been
time do fly.
I know that'd do. You know, it's so exciting to see how those things have flown and how so many aspects. One other thing, Harry, you've been working on a lot is your upcoming book. I believe, share with the viewers.
Oh, yeah.
The title's pretty short there.
You know, everybody assumes I did a book on music here. And yeah, this is a book on music, but it's also about societal changes along with the music and that kind of stuff.
Yes.
But this second book, it's ironic. What happened, sometimes when I'm waiting on a phone call or something and my cell phone doesn't work well in my office, so I have to take it on the line, and I've got nothing to do, so I'm sitting around with my computer on, and I just started typing out these questions.
Right.
And the name of the book is Why. And actually, the way it's going to happen, there's about 1,200 questions. And
1,200?
1,200. What I'm going to do is publish it in 4 volumes with about 300 per. And the Myrtle Beach Herald is going to start running it probably sometime this month. A couple, 3 questions per week. And it's simply questions with no answers. And some questions will offend some people, probably. Some will find a lot of them very funny. Some will say, gosh, I never thought about that.
Right.
But it's just one of those things that there are so many things in our society that there are just no obvious answers for.
Right.
Some maybe there are, but you know, I just started just jotting the things down, and like I said, some of the humorous things are things like, you know, why is the tequila sunrise more popular at sunset, is an example. Why don't people wear their birthday suits on their birthdays? You know, by the same token, we have some serious, deep questions like, why don't you ever see pictures of Jesus smiling? You see, and of course, I think the obvious answer would be because most of the people who painted the pictures were commissioned to do them that way by the people that were empowered in the church at the time.
Right.
But be that as it may, it's a mix of those kind of things.
How fascinating, Harry. And how have you gone about researching that? We just have a couple of minutes, and obviously our big focus is the class coming up next Wednesday, but
it's not a matter of researching. A lot of them are questions I've asked myself. I've had some other people suggest some questions, and we'll have some illustrations with it and stuff, and it's going to be published next year in time for the Christmas season, because those kind of books sell well as gifts for Christmas, kind of the novelty type books.
In 2006?
2006.
Okay.
Well, no, I'm sorry. We are in 2005.
Here we are.
First show of the year. All right. Yeah, for the 2005 Christmas season.
Spectacular. Yeah. So sometime in the next 10 months or so it'll be published. How
Probably
exciting.
September, October.
We've got some amazing authors in the area, and to know that something as creative as that, I'm amazed that other folks hadn't beat you to the punch there, Harry.
Hey, it's almost as creative as the best of.
The best of the year. That's right. That's right. That's coming out soon, February 3rd, along with the Herald right now.
I can't wait to see it.
Again, the phone number, 843-349-4032. 4032, that key aspect, the history of rock and roll and beach music.
Right.
And we're talking about at the Waccamaw Higher Education Center down there a little south of Brookgreen.
And again, beginning Wednesday of next week.
Wednesday the 19th.
Right.
Harry, you know, when you think about so many aspects, so many aspects of your life and traveling all over. Of course, you traveled the country,
Yeah.
and traveled the world, really. When you think about aspects of so many influences of music that have set in your mind, what's been the most exciting aspect for you when you think about the impact that music's had on your life?
Boy, and I'm usually pretty good at answering off the cuff. Probably it has been how this music brings people together, and seeing it firsthand, especially blacks and whites, but young and old, fat and skinny. Beach Music Day is an example. There is no low state, no upstate, no mid-state. There are no Democrats, Republicans, no blacks, whites, no male, female. They're all there together because it just feels so good. I think more than anything else, it's seeing, and there's nothing better than putting something on, like our symphony concert, to have people say, and you heard it yourself, gosh, that's the best time I've ever had in my life.
Yes.
What a compliment. What a compliment.
Harry, those are great words. Thanks so much for being with us this morning. Good luck with the class.
You got it, buddy. Thanks.
Okay. Stay tuned to more Carolina People with Harry Turner coming up next. The class is the history of rock and roll and beach music. The place is Coastal Carolina University's Waccamaw Higher Education Center. It kicks off next Wednesday, the 19th. Runs through Wednesday, February 23rd, 3:15 to 4:45. The instructor is the famous Harry Turner. And one of the course materials is This Magic Moment, his book from a decade ago, which is being updated now. Catch it. Give them a call at 349-4032. That's 349-4032 to get one of those last slots in the class.